This is chilling. Under oath, Pam Bondi just confirmed the DOJ is tracking a secret list of alleged domestic threats, but won't show it to Congress or anyone. No names, no criteria, no way off the list. At a judiciary hearing, Mary Gay Scanlon asked one simple question: did you create it? Bondi dodged, deflected, never answered. Watch this.
From Pennsylvania is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Bondi, I'm here. On September 25th, President Trump signed a memorandum known as NSPM 7, purporting to address domestic terrorism. But Americans across the political spectrum were immediately alarmed by the memo's blurring of the line between unlawful conduct and constitutionally protected speech and activity, as well as its call to investigate, prosecute, and dismantle groups that the president and Stephen Miller described without evidence as, quote, an organized campaign of radical left terrorism. Now, counterterrorism experts were further alarmed by the administration's singular focus on left-wing extremism, combined with the sudden deletion from the DOJ website of decades of research and law enforcement analysis, which had concluded that right-wing extremism poses the greatest terrorism threat to Americans. The president's memo broadly and vaguely links violent conduct to ideologies, and it targeted specifically anti-American, anti-Christian, and anti-capitalist beliefs, as well as, quote, hostility to so-called traditional American views on family, religion, and morality, end quote. President Trump has repeatedly and openly, however falsely, tried to brand his political opponents with these sentiments listed in his memo. But as you know, as a lawyer, holding beliefs that the White House disagrees with is not a crime. And the statute defining domestic terrorism requires criminal acts, not just thoughts and ideas. That's why legal experts, nonprofit leaders, religious freedom and civil rights advocates immediately raised the alarm that the new presidential directive was a politically motivated attack on civil society designed to silence those who disagree with the administration. So, Ms. Bondi, Section 3 of that memo directed you, as Attorney General, to submit to the President and Stephen Miller a list of groups or entities whose members are engaged in acts that meet the definition of domestic terrorism. And then on December 4th, you directed the FBI to work with a variety of law enforcement entities to compile a list of groups and entities engaged in such acts by January 3rd, 2026, and to update that report every 30 days thereafter. So can we assume that you or persons under your direction at the Department of Justice have prepared that list of groups or entities who are designated as domestic terrorist organizations? And I just remind you, that's a yes or no question. Did you prepare the list?
I'm not going to answer it yes or no, but what I will say is I know Antifa is part of that. I will talk to you about that.
I'm reclaiming my time. I asked you whether you
an Antifa member was
list.
arrested in Minneapolis federal court for
my
cyber
time.
stalking.
Did you
they
have
ask a question
list?
and don't want an answer.
The answer is yes or no.
Time belongs to the gentlelady from Pennsylvania. Gentlelady can proceed.
Okay. So will you commit to providing this committee with any list of organizations that you have recommended be designated as domestic terrorist organizations?
We will comply with the law in all matters.
Will you commit to provide this committee with your list of entities that you recommend be designated as domestic terrorist organizations?
I'm not going to commit to anything to you because you won't let me answer questions.
Okay, well then we do understand that your current position is that you have a secret list of people or groups that you are accusing of domestic terrorism, but you won't share it with Congress. And I'd remind you that when the US government designates an entity as a foreign terrorist organization, it must report that to Congress and to the entity, because the government can make a mistake and the entity has the opportunity to contest it. So your position seems to be that if you falsely designate an American or an American organization as a terrorist group, there's nothing they can do about it. I think we get it. You don't want to answer the question.
No, you don't get anything regarding public safety.
Thank you.
Nothing.
Thank you for the insult. It's clear he didn't come to Congress prepared to answer questions that the American people have every right to have answered. But if you were to prepared to answer truthfully, here's what we expect the facts to show. The administration is keeping lists of Americans who the White House says are engaged in domestic terrorism. Those lists could include Americans who have not committed any acts of terrorism, but simply disagree with this administration, people like Renee Good and Alex Preddy. And your list may include clergy, elected officials, and members of indivisible groups across the country. And those lists likely don't include Proud Boys or Oath Keepers who were actually convicted. Americans have never tolerated political demagogues who use the government to punish people on an enemies list. It brought down McCarthy, it brought down Nixon, and it will bring down this administration as well.
And you're right.
I yield back.
That's why we're so glad they rescinded the
That's
memorandum targeting parents. For goodness sake, as the gentleman from California just pointed out in his
First,
5 minutes.
the legal ground is non-existent. Lawfare, run by ex-national security lawyers, NPR, Congressional Research Service, every serious expert who's looked at this, there is zero legal authority in the United States to label a domestic organization a threat group. None. It doesn't exist. Brennan Center's Faisal Patel told PBS flat out, there is simply no system for creating domestic threat labels. The only process we have is for foreign terrorists, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, and even then the government has to notify Congress, publish it publicly, and let the group fight it in court. Foreign groups get more due process than American citizens and nonprofits do under Trump's NSPM 7 order. Second, the memo itself is a nightmare. Signed September 25, 2025, NSPM 7 doesn't stop at violence. It flags anti-Americanism, anti-capitalism, anti-Christianity as threat indicators. It targets hostility toward traditional views on family, religion, morality. Over 3,000 nonprofits blasted it in an open letter. 31 members of Congress questioned its legality. Miles Taylor, Trump's own former DHS chief of staff, called it deeply alarming. Arnold and Porter's legal take? Massive chilling effect. People shut up out of fear. That's the plan. Third, this should make your blood boil. The DOJ used to have real research on actual political violence threats. A National Institute of Justice study, Dodge's own arm, showed right-wing extremists racked up over 200 deadly attacks since 1990, hundreds of deaths, versus about 40 left-wing. They didn't update it. They didn't fix it. They deleted it in September 2025, right after the Charlie Kirk drama. 2 weeks later, NSPM 7 drops, suddenly claiming the threat is only from the left. Fourth, remember her Senate confirmation hearing, January 2025. Her exact words, there will never be an enemies list within the Department of Justice. 13 months later she's curating a secret political target list and sneering at a congresswoman. You don't get anything regarding public safety when asked to see it. From no enemies list to running one in the shadows, quite the glow-up. Here's the no BS version to tell anyone who asks. The administration ordered the AG to build a domestic threat organizations list. She built it in secret. She refuses to show Congress. No legal basis. No way to challenge it. Targets protected beliefs. Anti-capitalism, criticizing Christianity, views on gender and immigration, not crimes. This isn't fighting violence. This is a political enemies list with a national security sticker slapped on it. What does that mean for you? Donated to a group pushing immigration reform, climate action, criminal justice, reproductive rights? Congrats, you might be funding a domestic threat. Go to a church that doesn't match Stephen Miller's idea of traditional family, religion, morality? Your congregation could be on the list. You'll never know. No right to know. No right to fight it. It's a classified parking ticket. This is government machinery built to punish critics in broad daylight. Charity and Security Network flagged NSPM 7, directs IRS audits on suspect groups, and uses terrorist finance tracking tools on domestic funding. Lawfare called labeling anti-fascists a domestic threat pure political theater, no legal basis cited. Banks and platforms will freeze accounts anyway, chilling effect achieved. And remember, Proud Boys and Oath Keepers were convicted of seditious conspiracy, plotting to overthrow the government. Leaders got 18 and 22 years, the longest January 6 sentences. Trump-appointed judge signed off. Day 1 response? Pardons for all. Then they build a secret threat list that somehow doesn't include the groups actually convicted of political violence against the incoming president. Makes you wonder what the real criteria are. Bottom line, AG Bondi confirmed under oath she's running a secret domestic threats list. Won't share it with Congress. Won't name names. No legal authority. No due process. Targets First Amendment protected speech. This isn't about one group. It's whether the U.S. government can secretly label citizens and organizations based on beliefs, call them threats without authority, and stonewall Congress about it. McCarthy-era vibes, now juiced with modern national security tools. Scanlon's warning is spot on. History shows these abuses eventually crash and burn. but only after real damage. Question is how much harm before accountability hits. If this fires you up like it does me, smash that like button. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Is this the line we let them cross? Share it wide. Hit the bell. Subscribe for more unfiltered deep dives. Thanks for watching. Stay vigilant out there. Catch you next time.